Welcome to Bill Neyman's Bogus Hangout. It's almost first day of spring, and I have everybody introduce themselves. Doc?
Good morning, everybody. Doc Sheldon here, making babies cry and dogs howl from not so sunny Mexico.
Well, I guess I can't beat that. So I'm just Steve from Steam Driven Media.
So, sorry about the time loop. And I'm Bill Slosky from author of SEO by the Sea and director of SEO research at Go Fish Digital. I wrote about a patent yesterday where Google talks about using click-through rates as a ranking factor. It was a continuation patent. It was the third time it was updated. First version was in 2006. And we often get Google spokespeople telling us that they don't use click-through rate as a ranking factor. Do we believe the Google spokespeople, or do we believe the patents that they filed to protect their intellectual property? I sort of wave towards the patents.
Yeah, I kind of go the other way just because there's so many reasons to file a patent. And it's such a noisy signal. I think it would be, if they're using it at all, I would imagine that it must be a very low contributor to their ranking, because maybe if they had a threshold, if we see a dramatic increase in click-through and we're not seeing links or a specific routed traffic to corroborate that, then we're going to discount it. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a likely, very valuable factor.
The patent puts a lot of contingencies, a lot of additional features upon a click. So they don't just count the click itself as a ranking signal. They also look at the amount of time someone might spend on a page after they click.
Or secondary clicks internally, yeah.
And they'll compare what they consider the long clicks versus the medium clicks versus the short clicks. And they'll also look at the last click. So if you click on a site, stay there for a short period of time, and go right back to search results, they may not find much value in that click.
Sure. Makes sense. Well, after years of hanging on Matt Cutts' every word and the nuance to his comments, my first thought is, okay, when a spokesman says we don't use click-through rate, fine. Click-through rate is the result of a computation. It's a percentage.
Mm-hmm.
That saying that they do not use CTR can be a perfectly true statement, but they could still use clicks.
Sometimes Matt said things that had to be taken within the context of how he was saying them. Otherwise,
well, I mean, that comes back to the whole sandbox issue where they said, oh, there's no such thing as a sandbox. It's like, well, of course not, because you call it something else.
We have
the effect is the same.
An effect that looks like a sandbox, but we're not purposefully punishing people like a sandbox might be. It's like
it looks like a sandbox, it smells like a sandbox, it even talks like a sandbox.
But that's not what we call it. Litter box.
It's not a yeah, exactly. I'm kind of in the middle on whether I believe the spokespeople or not, because both of them could be filing patents can be just simple smoke, just like having a spokesperson say, oh no, that's not a thing. Because I don't know that there's any one or two people at Google anymore that knows all the things about the algorithm anymore. They might know their section very well, but I think it's very likely that they're working on the similar information that we are. It's kind of a best guess.
I would suspect that Jeff Dean and Paul Hare both know a lot of what the algorithm is, if not everything. They tend to write about so many things, and they tend to be so involved in uh,
Right.
how the search engines run. That, like, Jeff Dean is in charge of the Google Brain team, in addition to writing a lot of the stuff that talks about how Google's indexer works and how web crawler functions, how anchor text is indexed, how caffeine does incremental indexing of pages. Uh, it is pretty complex, though. Yeah.
There's a lot to know and a whole lot more to stay up to date on, as each of those teams is fine-tuning their bailiwick. It would be very difficult for any one person to off the cuff answer a question without going to the cog on that particular factor.
Right. One of the things that this patent said was, in addition to just looking at the clicks, they'll also look at the queries used for those clicks. So if the query is something like George Washington's birthday, and somebody visits a page, spends 30 seconds there, and leaves, they could have easily found a birth date if there was one on that page. They weren't looking for complicated information, and it maybe wouldn't take that long to find. If you just want one particular fact, and the query can help identify that. Or if you're looking for something like Greenwich Mean Time to Pacific Daylight Time. You may not spend too much time on the page being able to see that it's a 7-hour or an 8-hour difference between the two.
Well, every day I'll have searches that I never have to go beyond the SERP to get the answer. Just a couple of days ago, I said, okay, when's St. Patty's Day 2019? Boom, it's in the SERP. What's the first day of spring 2019? Boom, it's in the SERP.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, of course, a lot of people have a real problem with that, but the people that Google is trying to please are not the people that put those websites up. It's the people that searched for the information.
And if your business model is knowing that Abraham Lincoln is 6'4", or the first day of spring is the 20th, or St. Patrick's Day is the 17th, you might need a new business model.
Yeah, your plan might need some revision.
Yeah. I mean, if that's what you're providing as an informational source or a task that people can perform on your page, finding those small factual statements, you're not providing a lot. It's like Google took the place of sites like What Is My IP?
Mm-hmm.
So you can look your IP address up right in Google search results. Was there really a need for a website that did that?
Well, there was when it came up.
Well, for instance, okay,
it's
I
an
often
example
have
of somebody. Go ahead.
I often have to do currency conversions. Okay.
Yeah.
And I can go right to the Google SERP, and depending upon the query I put in, I may get a conversion table right in the SERP where I can choose the currencies I want to convert and put in the amount and get my answer right there. But if I had a website that I was offering a dozen different kinds of conversion tables for currency, temperature, weight, all these different types of conversion tables, I would much prefer that the users come to my site. Possibly they'll link to it, they'll bookmark it. I may gain a habitual user that way. But again, Google is not there to please me as a site owner. It's there to please me as a user.
One of the first sites I worked on, I put together, was a Delaware Incorporation business. We had lots of customers from around the globe. We had traffic from 180 countries to that site. So we had a currency converter. And it actually was a little bit difficult to code, sort of the same way that bulletin board code is different from HTML. It was a little bit tricky. So put together the page and noticed after a while using analytics or the stat counter that that currency converter page had links from a dozen other e-commerce sites to it because they didn't know how to program the currency conversion for their own sites. So they linked to ours.
Love it.
Yeah. So that was before there was a Google that cared about links. But once there was, that was the highest page rank page on the site.
See, and I take a philosophical or a Google's abusive attitude towards this because you've got people who built these websites and these tools for whatever reason. And then Google comes along and says, you know, we'd rather keep people on our site instead of going ahead and linking to you and making it easy for people to find your website and use your tool. We're just going to go ahead and put it here so they're more likely to do this, not leave, do another search, and maybe click on an ad.
Yeah.
So it's just frustrating because I know people who've been in that situation where they've had their website that was their bread and butter usurped by Google. And so then they have, then you're off looking for the next thing that you can do. But now you have to play a little more careful because, well, I mean, Google just launched their new video game streaming service. How's that going to affect the gaming world? Because I don't expect Google to stay in the gaming business for very long.
Mm-hmm.
You got some interesting ideas with what they're doing.
I watched part of the presentation. It's like you watch part of a game on a YouTube video to see what the game's like, and it's got a play now button in case you want to. You click on that, and you don't really need top of the line hardware to play games.
You need top of the line bandwidth.
Yeah.
See, so for a significant percentage of the world, this is going to be a non-adoptable service. And so I don't see it having any legs to last for very long, like Google Plus or any of the others that they're going to shut down. So do you want to develop a game that could be played like this just for Google, hoping that other people pick it up so that when Google does finally stop doing it, you don't lose your whole business model again?
They have been offering some features that have stood around longer than Orchid or Google Plus.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. It's such a bad relationship with Google these days. It's almost like an old ex-girlfriend or something. I will say the latest update had zero effect on any of our clients or anything like that. If anything, maybe a couple of them went up just a little bit. So I don't know what everybody was screaming about last week.
There seems to be a lot of backtracking on that as an update. See, Brett Tapke you referred to as a rollback. You said that's not an update, that was a rollback.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah. I guess because sites that maybe had lost traffic to the Medic update got recovered.
Yeah.
I've seen a few arguments over was it a rollback or was it not a rollback?
Well, my thinking is that just the fact that if you took a hit before and all of a sudden you've recovered a lot of that doesn't mean it's a rollback. You could have recovered a lot of that for some other reason.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think the rollback language rolls off people's tongues from Webmaster World rather easily because Google did roll back some of the things they released, and those would be featured in threads in Webmaster World.
Right.
I don't know. Were you both active in SEO at the time of the last Florida update, 2003?
Yeah.
I was just getting my feet wet.
Well, it happened like the first or second week of November 2003, when a lot of websites were anticipating lots of holiday sales.
Just
Yeah,
in
nice
time for the
timing.
Christmas sales.
Yeah.
Nice timing, eh?
And it's like, okay, where'd all the shoppers go?
Exactly. It forced a lot of retailers to start planning their online Christmas farther and farther in advance.
Yeah, like June.
Yeah. to be in a position that, because it got to where it was a joke. It's like, well, yeah, a month or two before Christmas, they're going to change something, and you got to be ready to scramble appropriately.
And all the Thanksgiving decorations in the stores get taken down, and all the Christmas trees go up. So you can't miss a single day of preparing for the holidays.
Yeah.
Or you walk into a local store and you find that they have pumpkins on aisle 2 and 3 and Christmas stuff on aisle 7 and 8, you know?
Yeah.
Playing both ends.
And Halloween has turned into a extra lengthy month-long or so extravaganza.
Mm-hmm. It's becoming Black Friday.
Yeah.
Like I saw somebody online they were talking about that very topic and how the things keep getting moved earlier and earlier and stretched out more and more. And they said, well, it's no longer Black Friday. Now it's Orange Friday.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure, have you prepared your website yet for the Easter holiday? I'm not sure how you do that, but I guess
we used to what the jewelry sites have very seasonal websites.
Yeah.
And it was really effective. I was really happy with how effective it was. The problem is it's the cost of maintaining and making those changes appropriately and making sure they get taken down right away.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say, here comes Mother's Day. Let's go ahead and get the website ready for that. But then around the end of July, it still says, here comes Mother's Day.
Kind of blows your credibility right out of the water, doesn't it?
Yeah. So it's not just a commitment to make the change ahead of time, but the change is back afterwards.
Couldn't you automate that?
Yeah, you could, but then that requires more budget up front. It's like, well, do I want to pay all the money to automate this tool that I like, but I may not keep using, versus just pay somebody for a few hours to do the work?
Mm-hmm.
That's become our big thing around here. It's like, there's a lot of stuff I could be automating, but it happens so infrequently that the amount of time spent doing the automation probably won't be recovered in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
And certainly not before the first, the reason for the automation gets changed.
Did either of you catch that SEJ post this morning from Dave Davies on how search works? It was a pretty good one. It was on how search works. He did a nice job of laying it out and layman's terms, if you will, a fairly simplistic way of understanding how the search process works, to a more user or site owner level of knowledge, not so much to SEOs. But I thought he did a nice job on it. It was pretty thorough.
Cool.
I'll drop it here in the chat. Find it.
The last thing I was looking at was apparently Google is working to promote their price comparison rivals now again to try to keep the EU antitrust lawsuit at bay. Kind of like when it reminds me of when Microsoft invested all that money in Apple all them years ago. So say, look, we have a viable competitor. We just gave them a whole lot of money.
Yeah, I think they may need to be a lot more aggressive than that to keep the EU folks at bay.
Yeah.
Although they're not going to go away quietly.
I would like to see some of the people who are going after them. They'll have a little bit more of a tech background.
Didn't Google just pay Apple $9 billion to carry search on Safari?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The only reason I did well in the stock market was when Microsoft invested all that money in Apple, I went ahead and bought some too. I figured if Bill Gates was willing to invest in them, I should be too. And that worked out well.
Yeah.
I wish I'd have had more money back then and bought a whole lot more stock. I wouldn't be here chatting with you now.
Mint juleps on the balcony, eh?
Pretty much. Be like the end of Trading Spaces. I'd be sitting on my yacht out in front of an island holding up a drink.
Yeah, but then you'd still be on satellite because you'd be out on your yacht, see?
Yeah. I don't think I'd care about the internet anymore. I'm pretty sure that would be a very low priority.
Some entrepreneurs just can't stay away, like Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'd know what to do without the internet. Same with Jack Dorsey.
I take breaks. We used to take more. I don't take as many as I used to. We used to take 10 days and go on a guy's trip up north to go fishing with no electricity or anything.
Yeah, when's the last time you went to Canada?
Oh my God, it's been 7 years. I need to go again, just for the recharge, if nothing else. But the fishing's pretty awesome. Although we may have trouble crossing the border now. A couple of friends got in trouble the last trip we went.
Uh-oh.
Apparently, when they land their DNR plane on the water and catch you drinking beer on the water, that's illegal in Canada. And then on the ride back to the cabin, so they can write you tickets, you're not supposed to finish your beer.
That seems like a terrible waste of beer.
So drinking the beer is fine as long as you continue to fly. As soon as you land in the water, it's a problem?
No, we were fishing. And in Canada, you're not allowed to take your alcohol for a boat ride. It's just not allowed. Where here, that's the whole point of going out on the boat was to get drunk.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so when their DNR plane came in just to check these these boats out that were we were fishing. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning. And guys had beer in their cooler and 2 open ones. And so he wanted them to go back to the cabin so he could, write them up. And on the boat ride back to the cabin, they went ahead and finished the open beers.
I was just studying for the California driver's license, and they explained how you're not supposed to have open containers of alcohol in your car.
Yeah.
And the question, I was studying for the written test, so they said if you have open container of alcohol, you can't have it in the glove compartment. You can't have it in the cab of the car, but you can have it in the trunk.
Yeah, it can, as long as it's not accessible to the operator.
To the driver.
In California, it's legal. Yeah.
So as long as you drink only in the trunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how many drinking buddies can you fit in an average trunk? You know, that's an uncomfortable ride.
Hey, it sounded like a nonsense question to me, but
it's another one of those trick questions.
I came across that one time. I got stopped by the California High Patrol. We were on our bikes coming back in from the desert, and I had about probably 75-80% of a bottle of Jack Daniels in my backpack, closed up on the, strapped on the back of my seat.
Yeah.
And he asked if he could look at my backpack. He was probably thinking he was going to find some dope, So I said, sure. And he rifled through there and he found a bottle. He pulled it. He says, I'm going to give you a freebie on this one. He says, next time, since you're missing like a shot and a half out of this thing, if this thing, the seal is broken, it's got to be full. Otherwise, it's an open container. He says, so next time, top it off with some water. This is the state trooper. So, but he said, basically, the seal can be broken as long as it's full. But I wouldn't want to put that to the test with just any old cop that pulled me over. But yeah, as long as it's the same way with a handgun. I used to carry my 44 with me, and you can't have a loaded weapon in the car. It has to be unloaded, and the ammunition has to be in an inaccessible place from the weapon. So the gun on the seat and the ammo in the glove box is a no-go. Even if the glove box is locked, that's no good. You put the ammo in the trunk, you're solid. Well, I'm riding my bike, and I've got my 44 Magnum strapped around the sissy bar of the bike with 50 rounds in the ammo loops on the belt, and I got to meet a California High Patrolman again. The gun was unloaded. But he says, and he's the one who explained to me. He said, no, you got a proximity, accessibility. He said, yes, the gun is unloaded, but it's literally 2 inches away from ammunition.
So
have you ever tried to load a weapon while riding a motorcycle, officer?
It is tricky, yeah.
We got pulled over years ago coming back from a gun range. And we were in our buddy's Trans Am with the T-tops off. And the officer pulled up behind us. We both stuck our hands out the T-tops. And he paused, and he's like, what's going on? And we're like, we have guns in the car. Please don't kill us. And so he called in, backup and everything, and they had us get out of the car. And by the time they were done, they had unloaded out of the car from various places, like 15 handguns and 10 rifles, and probably still the leftovers of 2,000 rounds of ammo, and it got to where everybody was just laughing as they're just laying everything out,
like a clown car. They just keep coming.
We're having fun, sir. We're just coming back from the gun range. It's like, and by the time it was all done, we were there for like 2 hours, and they told us to go ahead and pack it all up. And then he forgot to write us a speeding ticket. Sweet, see ya. Have a nice day, sir. I'm sure later in the afternoon he's like, oh, man. It's terrible, terrible. Did anybody hear something about net neutrality's making its way through Congress again?
I haven't heard anything, but it doesn't surprise me. It keeps coming back.
The
it's another one of those required
regulations okaying net neutrality, and Congress keeps on shooting them down.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with this one. I just caught it in passing, and I haven't really had a chance to look at it.
From the folks who have such an in-depth understanding of the net, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like a bunch of old white men legislating women's bodies.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, what is wrong with the idea of giving legislators basic classes on internet literacy before they roll into office and rule?
It eats into their fundraising time.
Which starts before they even get elected.
Yeah. That's like my favorite video is that Philip Mammouf running for office and explaining how politics works. He's like, I spent 75% of my time raising money so I get reelected so I could do all these things. But if the guys that give me money don't like those things, well, my hands are tied.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Pregnant pause.
Yeah, well, not since high school.
What else is going on? Well, for anybody, I can't see how many folks we got watching, but anybody that's not aware, our buddy Dave is laid up with a few fractures in his right leg and foot. Fell down the stairs, or as somebody said that Tanya might have pushed him. But he got a plate and a rod and some screws put in his leg, and Tanya was telling me yesterday that the dog jumped up on the sofa onto his leg. That made the dog real popular. So he was hurting. He's probably just starting to feel semi-human again. That first 5 or 6 days after a fracture like that is pretty uncomfortable. I guess they sent him home with some pretty decent pharmaceuticals, though. So
Yeah, I was wondering. I know that there's a bar right down the street from where he lives. I was wondering if they deliver. I hope so. Yeah, I found out that the local DoorDash in my area will do delivery from a couple liquor stores. I haven't ordered anything from them yet, but it was good to know just in case.
You got to support your local businesses, man.
Yeah. If you can't help take care of your economy may not be around too long to help take care of you.
There you go.
Which is why, American Express has a small business Saturday. I figure you've got to buy from local businesses.
Well, for a lot of reasons. I mean, I've lived in a lot of small towns. Only had maybe 2,000 people, and people would bitch about having to drive 50 miles to find a decent liquor store or a decent grocery store or a decent hardware store. And, well, you've got one right here in town. Walk in here and tell Frank that I wish you had a bigger selection of this or that. Maybe Frank will take care of you, and you'll take care of him, and you won't have to drive 50 miles every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
But nobody is willing to be inconvenienced without short-term payback,
No, we've got a couple local, like a local auto parts store. The next one after him's a 40-minute drive.
Yeah.
And I do everything I can to shop with him as much as possible, just to keep him here. He may not always have what I need, but he can get it for me tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's like, do I wait a day or do I drive an hour and a half round trip.
Well, and I've found an awful lot of small business owners, whether it be a liquor store or a hardware store or a grocery place, if you tell them, you know what, I really like this particular vegetable. I notice you never have. And the example in point was Brussels sprouts. I like Brussels sprouts. I'm one of the 3 people on the planet that does, apparently. and the grocery store that we had down there in Wimberley, Texas, never had Brussels sprouts. Well, Brussels sprouts they're an off season. They don't last a long time. So, you bring in a couple bushels of these things and you end up throwing a bushel and a half out. You're not going to stock them anymore because nobody buys them. I said, look, can you tack on, a 2-pound bag or a 1-pound bag of these things your next order? And he did. And he would call me and tell me, hey, got some Brussels sprouts in.
Yep.
The same with the liquor store. I like George Dickel Sour Mash. Nobody ever carries it. I mean, hell, in all of Austin, I only found one liquor store that carried it. I talked to the guy down there in Wimberley, and he brought it in. He'd bring in a case, and that would carry me through a week or 3. And he'd bring in another case. When he got down to a couple of bottles, he'd order another case, and he'd call me and say, hey, your stuff is in, I didn't have to buy the case. But again, like you say, you support your local businesses, and then they'll stick around. And when you live in a small or rural community, especially, it becomes important.
Well, we just dropped stupid money yesterday with at the tractor store buying a tractor, and while having a discussion with the owner of the company, it's like, look, I'm here far less for what tractor you sell than who you are, because I know he's going to take care of us regardless of what happens. So, he let us know a couple months ago he was expecting certain tractors in, and he called us the day it came in. We were there that afternoon, and I now own a brand new shiny red tractor.
And he made a sale. That's
and he made a great sale, and I mean,
and you can bet he will take care of you too, because you took care of him. Yeah.
And there was no haggling with the price, or he told us what the price was, and it's like, I probably could have gone to a bigger city in Iowa and gotten that same tractor for $5,000 less, but now I'm going all the way to freaking Iowa. No, I'll pass. I'll get it from my local guy, pay a little more.
Let him get it here from Iowa.
Actually, he got it from Italy, so apparently I didn't know they do the final assembly on the Case International tractors is in Italy.
I'll be damned.
I had no idea. So, it's what it is. But it's nice. Air conditioning, stereo. It's even got a little
tractor. Yeah, all the things you need in a tractor.
Yeah, well, when it's 95 degrees out, you got to be out working. It's nice to be inside.
and by the time he gets out there ready to cut his hay, he'll have that thing outfitted with Wi-Fi, Bill.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm looking to put an XM satellite antenna on it and do that. We'll see. Back to that old joke. It's like the guy in a sports car telling the farmer, he's got $50,000 in this sports car that he only drives on weekends. The farmer's like, that's nice. I had $250,000 in that tractor that I only drive 3 times a year.
I know when I was living down in Imperial Valley, it was nothing to lay out $120,000 for a windrower.
Yeah,
a hay mower, and there had never I had never heard of a co-op. Okay, the guy come around saying, "Hey, how'd you like to join our co-op?" Well, I don't know what's it do. We get together every 2 weeks and discuss local issues. And, I said, yeah, I just need to have someplace else to participate in meaningless meetings. He said, then, you need a tractor because your tractor's down. You need an extra baler or something like that. Somebody's got one, and they put it in, they make it available to you. You can borrow their mower. I thought, well, that doesn't sound like a bad deal, but I already know these guys. You know, if I need a baler, I just call Mark or Frank or Stan, and they can borrow your baler. And so what they started doing, they actually started pooling their money and buying one. And it became the property of the co-op. Now you didn't have to compete with Stan. And whoever got his name up first got the mower, you know. And it worked great. But one of the things that shot it in the back was the fact that these guys would go out of Kansas and buy this equipment. This is for the Imperial Valley in California. And there's places right there in El Centro. Hell, there was places right there in Calexico that sold this equipment. So somebody would drive up to Kansas and come back with 3 semis full of Farmall tractors or a couple of windrowers and save 60 grand.
Mm-hmm.
But then the local Farmall guy, the international guy, went tits up because he wasn't making any local sales.
Yep.
And the co-op basically fell apart for like 5 or 6 years until they finally reformed a new one, and they had in their bylaws that they were always going to buy local. And I'm talking back in the 70s.
I know
it's not a new concept. You know, support your local community and let it support you.
The guy we buy from, he is constantly buying closed up tractor stores because they can't make it where they are because people won't buy local.
Yeah.
Which gives us the opportunity to buy stuff at a discount because he got it at a discount. Which is the other nice thing, is he's real good about pricing. And us being technically city folk, he comes out and does the delivery, delivers the equipment to us, then shows us how to use it and make sure we don't get killed, and because he wants us to stay alive to buy more.
Ulterior motive.
Yep. So it's all good. I'm just wondering how long it'll take her before she gets it scratched.
Well, I'm just wondering if she got it stuck yet.
I don't know, not yet. Probably next rain, because it's going to be complete. It's got the narrower tires, but it weighs significantly more, so maybe it'll find the bottom and be able to get traction. Or be so stuck we'll have to get a crane to get it out.
I was just saying, the golf cart may not do the trick.
No.
Well, speaking of supporting local business, Bill, I know you've been supporting a lot of Carlsbad small businesses.
Yeah.
Seems like you find a new nook or cranny every time I turn around.
I've been trying out places in Encinitas too. Just the next town over. It's like not too far to go.
Hey, when is the fair? The big fair down there is going to be coming up here, what, April or May? Not in Encinitas. What is it?
Carlsbad Fair.
Well, no, it's not the Carlsbad Fair. It's
okay. It's the San Diego Fair. Del Marva.
Del Mar. Yeah, that's right.
Del Mar. Yeah.
Yeah, when is that? Do you know?
I'm not sure the exact dates. It's seems like it's right at the beginning of the summer. No?
Oh, is it? Okay, I was thinking it was spring. It could be. Haven't been up to that in a long time. Yeah, you can wear out a pair of shoes walking that Del Mar fairground.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy Durante Boulevard. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. All the old Hollywood stars used to hang out in San Diego. Mm-hmm. Bob Hope and Bing Crosby would golf here, and Name the road outside the fairgrounds after Jimmy Durante, right?
Yeah. Like there's a Dean Martin there somewhere too, which always surprised me. I thought he spent most of his time in Vegas with the rest of the Rat Pack.
Didn't know that.
There used to be there's Dean Martin somewhere down in that area. I'm pretty sure it was in Del Mar.
I just saw a story coming through on Hacker News that Kickstarter's developers are unionizing.
Well,
Wonder how that's going to go.
that doesn't seem like a likely event, does it?
Interesting.
No, it doesn't. It's like an alternative way to get startup funding, isn't it?
Yeah.
I hadn't seen anything like that. That just defies logic to me. But
See, and I'm not real sure why they're unionizing. I'm just scanning the article real quick, and it doesn't really give a reason other than, the basics is they probably just want more money.
or somebody maybe thinking that they can then enforce some sort of a standard.
Well, here's their stated goal is to have a formal seat at the table to negotiate with management to promote their collective values and ensure Kickstarter is around for the long haul. Basically, it sounds like they want to keep Kickstarter from doing other things.
Or keep them from allowing some jackleg in there to present on Kickstarter.
I waffle back and forth on unions. I've seen so many horrible things come out of unions, but I've also seen some great training centers that have been built using union money to train, especially the trades. I just posted a job listing for pipe fitters up in Chicago. And without the union, that school wouldn't be there. So you wouldn't, your pipe fitters would be learning on the job rather than in school. And that's one of those jobs I'd kind of rather them learn in school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I don't want somebody who's new to welding be welding up something important.
I was in a machinist and aerospace workers union, and I filed a grievance because we were the subsidiary, a smaller subsidiary of a much larger shop. And the machinists in the other shop were getting paid at a much higher rate than we were. And I thought we should get equal pay. So we were doing equivalent jobs.
How'd it work out?
It was successful. It worked. It made me feel better about paying that union dues every paycheck.
I briefly was a member of IBEW Electrical Workers many years ago, and I made it as brief as possible after coming to blows with the BA on a job site.
Yeah.
But to me, especially when you start talking about a union breaking into a shop, trying to unionize a particular industry, it usually ends up, in my mind's eye at least, being for exclusionary reasons. They want exclusivity. They want to make sure that these other people can't get in there, that these other people can't do this job, that they're not allowed on the site or holding this box or operating this switch. And that the whole concept goes against the grain. I'm looking at it more of a capitalist point of view. If this guy is willing to do the work so much cheaper than you, why are you so friggin' expensive to do the same job? Compete. If you have better skills, then show it, market it, but don't make him go pick cotton because you want to have the only chance to land this particular job. And it used to irk the hell out of me, especially when we used to do a lot of government work, when you were required to use union labor. That your bid wasn't even responsive if you were non-union. That just drove me up a tree.
Well, I was in Teamsters for a while, and then I was in the California Educators Union for a while. And of the two, the Educators Union was the most screwed up thing I have ever seen in my life. Holy crap, was that a shit show. But it was like, that's the way it is. I don't understand this. You've got people who are teaching, making less than the guy emptying the garbage cans out on the playground because he's been there for 20 years. And I don't normally complain about how people make their money, but good Lord, at a certain point, when do you say that, paying the guy that empties the trash cans $90,000 a year is a good idea?
And paying somebody to whom you're entrusting the education of little Nancy $42,000 a year, Exactly. And that's on a good day. I know teachers that have been teaching for 15 to 20 years that are making like in the high 30s. Good Lord. Yeah, I've never been a big fan of unions, and after working with some colleagues that were basically trying to keep the Teamsters out, I didn't walk away feeling any better about them than I did. I got named in 2 federal lawsuits by the bastards, so one of which was thoroughly justified, by the way.
Generally, unions suck if you're naturally a top performer. If you're somebody that naturally performs at the highest levels all the time, union's going to suck for you. Just because you're going to be held back by everybody underneath you. Now, if you're a guy that's on the bottom of that scale, you love unions because, well,
do less, make more.
Now, that's not to say that unions haven't had a place and probably still have a place in certain industries. I mean, we'd still have people dying by the hundreds underground in mining accidents if it weren't for unions. Because there's, at a certain point, the actual feet on the ground versus the guy running the company, those two things never seem to cross paths very often.
Yeah.
I mean, look how many people used to die. They used to count, skyscrapers by how many people died building it. There was actually a statistical number for that. And this many people are going to die building this skyscraper because of how tall it is. And they built that into the cost. It's like, wow.
Yeah. When that becomes a line on your estimating form, you got a problem.
Yeah. So I can understand why unionizing certain things and bringing in groups like OSHA is a big deal. But for computer programmers, I don't understand how anybody would think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. So you don't think a union is necessary for SEOs?
I think before SEOs become unionized, maybe they should actually have a certificate provided by Google or Bing or Yahoo, if they were still around, that had legitimate training behind it instead of guesswork. Because while there are an awful lot of people out in the world who know a shit ton about search engines, you can't with any authority say this is why, and this is why we do these things, and make that the standard, because there's no standard. because the search engines won't tell us.
And there are people teaching.
Guess.
There are people teaching about search engines who spout nonsense with every breath.
Yeah. Yep. And they seem to make a lot of money doing it.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that drives me up a tree is the fact that we cannot, as a community, agree upon what the standards should be, because, like Steve says, the search engines are not sharing that with us. So if we can't even agree on what best practices are, it's kind of pie in the sky to think that we'll ever be able to get to a certification level. But how about we just start with a code of ethics? Never mind what you do or do not know about SEO. How should a consultant treat a client? What should a client be able to reasonably expect from his attorney, his physician, his consultant? And we can't even agree that would be beneficial.
I thought Bruce Clay solved that problem.
Have you tried to read that code of ethics?
Yeah, it's fun.
And with a straight face. I mean,
but you come back to your standards. If Terry were to write the standards, every SEO should be a programmer.
An IIS, advocate.
and no IIS, yeah. And if I were to write the standards, I wouldn't think you need to be a programmer. I think you should understand the basics of coding, but you shouldn't have to be able to write code. That's what developers are for. Fortunately, I think the tech industry as a whole has matured a lot in the last 5 to 10 years, that we can start saying, it's okay to be just a developer. It's okay to be just an SEO. You don't have to be an all-in-one anymore, because it's getting to the point where it's not possible.
It's too much, yeah.
That's why I've been letting some of my SEO skills rust away. I would rather focus on paid traffic. I find that more entertaining. Can I still do technical SEO and lay out a website for a client? You bet. Do I pay somebody else to write content? 100%. I have trouble writing my own content, as Doc knows well. But it's just what it is.
Yeah, I don't foresee an SEO union anytime in my lifetime.
No,
I don't foresee.
Nor do I hope to.
I don't foresee a code of ethics for
either
anytime. At least a reasonable one, as opposed to one that somebody puts up on one page of their website and points people to and saying, "We're ethical. Hire us."
I have that same rule about people who proclaim themselves to be good Christians. I run. If you have to tell me you're a good Christian, I don't want to work with you. If somebody else tells me, then okay, maybe. But now, if you've got to say it yourself, there's probably a reason you have to say it.
Well, that's true of just about any kind of declaration. Guru, ninja, expert. If it's coming from you, it don't mean shit. If it's coming from the people who work with you, it might have some weight.
If you're paying them to say it. So once upon a time, the SEO industry was considered the Wild West. Is it still the Wild West?
Once upon a time?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on how you want to define the Wild West, I guess. I mean, when you look back at some of the things we did when search engines first arrived, as far as trying to figure out what worked and what didn't, it was definitely more Wild West than it is now. But when you start looking at how many people think getting into the industry is easy, and I mean, good Lord, there's a couple of Facebook groups that I belong to where daily people come in and say, I just got my first client. What do I do now? It's like, whoa.
How do I get this PBN to work correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some of this stuff is just amazing. And then you've got people who really should know better, who have established businesses. One guy came in one of the closed groups for paid traffic and lost his entire agency account on Facebook and 87 clients worth of ad companies. I mean, they shut it all down, and he couldn't figure out why. Until we got to talking to him in private and got him to open up a little bit, it's like, oh, here's the problem. You made some very basic mistakes that you should have never made. And Facebook saw all these different ad accounts as all his and not 87 different clients. And they shut them all down because they assumed he was gaming the system. And so he's pretty much screwed.
Kind of
so
hard
what
to
does he
reverse
do?
that too.
Yeah, I mean, and I saw that happen 3 or 4 years ago. A large agency that was, billing out hundreds of thousands, managing millions of dollars of ads every month, lost everything overnight because one of their clients was determined to be a bad actor. And since he was a manager on their account, they determined he was a bad actor because he was associated to them. And then they killed all of his client accounts because he was a focal point. And basically he woke up the next morning to all of these, millions of dollars worth of ad spend just gone. And his company never recovered because there was, nothing he could do. Facebook refused to talk to him, even at the level of money he was spending. They just said, nope, this is done. You can't do it. So then, all these clients are left not only without an agency to manage their accounts, but their own ad accounts have all been shut down. What do they do? It's a mess. And it could be a mess real quick, real easy for a simple mistake.
Somebody ought to write a book about that, Steve.
Yeah. No thanks. I have a choice. I could go fishing or I could write a book. I do believe that's an easy choice.
You can't fish and read a book at the same time?
I could if I could get somebody sit next to me and write down what I say and edit out all the here fishy comments while I'm fishing.
It sounds like a tape recorder and a inexpensive personal assistant might do that job.
Yeah. Someday, maybe. There's too many things to do and not enough time.
Isn't that the premise behind the 4-hour work week?
Yeah. That's right. I work 4 hours a day. And then I spend the next 4 hours working out in the shop, and then the next 4 hours fixing whatever my wife broke. Yeah.
Right out of 4-hour blocks after a while. Yeah.
Exactly.
4 hours per job, and I've got 4 jobs, eh?
Much.
Yeah, 10 jobs, 4 hours each. Yeah.
It wouldn't be so bad, but they all about half of them tend to be an emergency at the same time.
Oh yeah.
I just looked at my to-do list, and three quarters of it is red. It's like, I wonder how old some of that stuff is.
Yeah, my to-do list is 3 pages, bro.
Oh, let's see here. There's the oldest thing on my to-do list is from January 15th, and it's write an article for Search News Central. Sorry about that, Doc. So, yeah. I at least thought of a title and what to write about. Does that count for anything?
Sure.
It's 40% of the way there.
That's it. Now I got to work on my keyword density and 600 words so that we can make sure we fit that sweet spot for the SEO algorithms. And it's easier to write that way when you say, okay, well, your keyword density is 3%. So I want an 800-word article. So how many times do I have to mention the keyword? You write all those down, spaced out on the page, and then just put filler around them. You're done.
Don't forget the synonyms.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I remember writing articles like that a long time ago with the braces and then the pipes separating all the synonyms and just plop it in the middle and let the software randomize it. There you go. Google didn't figure that out at all.
Oh, of course not. And they didn't have enough money to go out and buy copies of that software either to look at the patterns.
Yeah.
So you were an early artificial intelligence practitioner, huh?
Mm-hmm. And I honestly think we wrote one of the first automated cloaking tools too. It was a pretty slick piece of software. Type in your keywords. It'd run out and find those keywords on other people's websites and pull snippets of text and build all these pages for you automatically. It was cool. For about 8 months, we were able to take any website and shove it to the top of the search results for pretty much any term.
Was that in Alta Vista?
It was Alta Vista and Yahoo.
That was back in the Wild Wild West days.
Yep. Back in the Wild Wild West. It didn't hurt that one of the guys that worked at Yahoo helped us write the software. So, yeah. That wouldn't happen again today, would it? You don't think any of them Googlers would do something underhanded like that?
So I went to a Google dance. There was a guy there who introduced himself to me and said, "You write that blog that talks about all those Google patents, right?" He said, "I like that. I like how you write about the algorithms. I'm here to hire some people who work for Google to work for me and spam Google."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will pay them more.
I think that's what his plan was. Yeah. So I'm thinking to myself, do I write about Google's patents so that this guy can rip Google off using what I write about? He just hires people from Google. They already know this stuff.
Yeah.
They don't need what I write.
Well, but you do bring something that is unfortunately rather unique to the equation, though, Bill. You actually use your head for something besides a hat rack in interpreting the things. Putting a little thoughtful analysis into those patents is definitely value added.
Mm-hmm. Well, if they're patents that are worth anything, they should be easy to interpret and understand. At least to somebody who works in that field.
Yeah.
Now, I don't build search engines, but I've been reading the patents long enough to have some idea of what they're talking about. Well,
you got a pretty good understanding of the technological aspects of what they can do and what they're probably talking about when they use this term or this action. And unfortunately, if the thing ever comes to a violation of someone's patent, in court, who's making the decision? If this is an infringement suit, who is actually deciding whether it is what Bing has done is really in violation of the terms of Google's granted patent, for instance? Is it somebody who has the sort of knowledge of search and search engines that you have, or is it an attorney who has, basically a knowledge of the semantic meaning of the description?
A school teacher or a factory worker or somebody else who's sitting in a jury.
Would hopefully
they're not technologists.
So
they don't do any technology related to work.
So that can be an issue when you start talking about technological issues, though, because a descriptive, knowing what this word means in the normal English lexicon is one thing. Knowing what it means in the use that it was applied in this patent,
right,
may be somewhat different. And equating that to this action with a different buzzword attached to it that the other search engine is using, and seeing the similarity or the overlap there, it kind of necessitates some understanding of the process. So, I have some misgivings about the outcome of that sort of a suit.
And Google hides stuff in plain sight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like they use the word content in a patent. They don't mean content like you and I do.
Yeah.
They mean ads.
Yeah. Ooh, we're well past the top, bro.
Oh, we are.
Time flies.
Sometimes lose track of the time. All right. Well, thank you both. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Bye all.
Later.